Greek theater, State Standard HS2.T.CR1.A. Investigate historical and/or cultural conventions and their impact on the visual composition of a theatrical work. We know that what we recognize as theater started out largely as a religious event. Over time, it changed from an act of pure religious worship to an educational opportunity. Plays were used not only to worship the god Dionysus, but, as the festival grew in popularity, they were used to teach the Greek people about their common history, myths, and legends. These events were so popular that thousands of people would attend every year, and the Greeks had to design a special kind of theater. The word acoustics refers to the properties of a structure that either enhance or inhibit the transmission of sound. If a space has good acoustics, that means sound travels clearly between its origination point and the ears meant to hear it. If a space has bad acoustics, that means sound travels poorly and gets distorted or absorbed before reaching its intended ear. Why would good acoustics have been important to the ancient Greeks? Our theater at Cheatham County High School seats 264 people. The theater at Epidaurus seats 14,000. That's more people than you can fit in First Tennessee Park where the Sounds play baseball. That's half of Fenway Park. That's 1/4 of Nissan Stadium. 14,000 people, but no electric sound amplification system meant the Greeks had to figure out how to make sure everyone could hear and see what was going on. The acoustic design of the theater at Epidaurus helped immensely. So did the masks worn by the actors that had little megaphones in the mouthpiece that helped amplify the sound. But the actors still had to project their voices. To project means to speak at full volume without shouting. A normal conversational tone is too soft to fill even the space we have at Cheatham County High School. Shouting is loud enough for everyone to hear, but it damages your vocal cords and can't be sustained over a long period of time, even for the length of a play. Projection is a compromise. It's loud enough for everyone to hear, but it doesn't harm the actor's voice. The theater at Epidaurus was designed to amplify sound, but there was no way to amplify the visuals. When you go to a concert at Nissan Stadium today, or even to a ball game at First Tennessee Park, there's a guy with a camera and a jumbotron screen so that everyone can see what's going on. The ancient Greeks didn't have anything like that, so they had to use some costume and acting tricks to make the actors' bodies seem larger than life. On their feet, the actors would wear cothurni. Cothurni were platform shoes that made the actors taller. The actors also employed a technique known as rhetorical gesture. Rhetorical gestures are physical actions with a specific meaning. For example, if I'm talking to someone across the cafeteria and I want them to send me a text message, instead of shouting to them, "Hey, text me," what I could do is hold up my hand and make a tapping motion with my thumb that looks like I'm using a cell phone to send a text message. That is an example of a rhetorical gesture. The actors would use another technique known as extension. Extension means I take every gesture and I make it as large and slow as possible. This will increase the chance that the audience will see and understand what is going on, even if their seatmates are making too much noise to hear properly. Modern theater spaces are still modeled after ancient Greek designs, and many parts of a Greek stage can still be found in modern theaters. In ancient Greece, the Theotron was the seating area. This is where audiences would sit to watch a play. Today, we call this area the house. The orchestra was the circular acting space directly in front of the Theotron. This is where the chorus would do their singing and dancing. Today, this is the area where musicians will set up to play music that accompanies a play. In the center of the orchestra was the thymele. The thymele was the altar for the burning of sacrifices. Most modern theaters don't have a thymele. To either side of the circular acting space were aisleways known as parados, or paradoi when speaking of them in the plural. These aisleways were used by the actors to enter the acting space. Today, theaters that have these aisleways call them vomitoria. What a lovely name. On the other side of the orchestra from the Theotron was a structure known as the Scena, and built onto the front of this structure was a raised acting space known as the Proscana. It is from the word Proscana that we get our modern word proscenium. Proscenium is the name for the kind of theater space we have at Cheatham County High School. Behind this raised acting space was a structure known as the Scena. The Scena was a storage area for props, costumes, and any equipment needed for special effects. Yes, the ancient Greeks had special effects. Today, we simply refer to this area as the backstage area. The ancient Greeks would often paint the Scena to be an appropriate backdrop for their plays, but if they needed to change locations during the course of a play, they would use structures called periactoi. Periactoi were giant, vertical, rotating triangles. This allowed the Greeks to have different scenes painted on each side of these giant triangles, so they could have up to 3 different locations in their plays. For many years, it was the convention of Greek theater to only have one actor talking back to the chorus, telling a story, and playing all the characters by using different masks. Aeschylus was a Greek playwright who challenged and broke this convention by adding a second actor. 2 actors on stage together meant that characters could talk directly to each other. People liked this new idea so much that other playwrights copied the idea, and this imitation led to the formation of a new theatrical convention. Then came Sophocles. Sophocles was another Greek playwright. He decided to improve upon Aeschylus's idea by adding a third actor. Having 3 actors on stage allowed characters to have group conversations. This seemed to be sufficient for ancient Greek audiences because after Sophocles invented the third actor, theatrical conventions in ancient Greece did not change for centuries. In summary, the conventions of Greek theater included no more than 3 actors on stage playing multiple roles by changing masks, and a chorus of no more than 12 individuals in the orchestra singing and dancing, mediating, and acting as behavior models for the audience. All actors wore masks and kathernae. In Greek plays, any violence would only be referred to. You would never see it happen on stage. Conventional wisdom of the time alleged that it was actually bad for a person's health to observe violent acts, even when actors were playing pretend. For this reason, Greek audiences would never see a character die, even if they died in the middle of the story. The actor playing that character would leave the stage, and another actor would come on and report that the character had died. Finally, in Greek theater, women were not allowed to be on stage as performers. In the beginning, women had been part of the chorus, but over time, this practice was ended because it was considered lewd and indecent for women to display themselves in public by dancing. Instead, female characters would be played by teenage boys whose voices had not yet changed. Each year, the grand procession was still taking place to honor the god Dionysus, but now, competition between playwrights to see who could tell the best story became the big draw for festival goers. Playwrights would work all year hoping to be selected to participate in the competition. The rules of the festival competition were as follows. First, only 3 playwrights would be selected to compete. Each of those playwrights would write 4 plays each, meaning there would be a total of 12 plays in the competition. Of the 4 plays each, 3 of them were required to be tragedies. Usually, these would be a trilogy of the same story or following the same characters throughout their lives. The 4th of the 4 plays would be a Seder play. A Seder play was inspired by Dionysus's companion, Pan, and it is from the word Seder that we get the modern word satire. A satire is a work that makes fun of something else. Playwrights were required to write this satyr play or satire ridiculing their own work. In other words, playwrights would spend all year working really hard to write a trilogy of tragedies, beautiful and sad, and one play that made fun of the works that they had spent all year perfecting. Why do you think the playwrights were required to make fun of their own work? In Greek culture, pride was very distasteful. It was considered bad behavior to brag about yourself, to get a big head, to be arrogant. The practice of requiring satyr plays ensured the playwrights were aware that their plays had flaws and discouraged any playwright from getting too cocky. Soon, we'll begin studying Aristotle's work, the Poetics. This work is a record of the conventions of Greek tragedy. It's because of this book that we know so much about ancient Greek theater. Through this work, we understand one major theme that the ancient Greeks wrestled with a lot in their plays. Are our lives controlled by fate, some divine force beyond our control, or by free will? In other words, our own choices. What do you think, and why?